We are back for part 2 of my chat with Lisa and David Dault. And if you missed last week, that means you missed a very exciting announcement that I made at the very end. For the first time since January, I am hosting our free live webinar on the 4 most common Instagram photography mistakes and how to avoid them in just under 2 weeks. Seems like September should be a lot farther away, but as it turns out, it's less than 2 weeks away. This webinar will be on September 6th and 7th. There's different times each day to cover as many time zones as we possibly can. I am looking at you, my friends in Australia and New Zealand and Asia. September 6th does not mean you have to get up at 3 a.m. So, because I know you're thinking it already, yes, these tips will work even if you only use your cell phone to photograph your work. And no, they will not involve any fancy equipment, and you won't have to buy anything extra in order to walk away after 1 hour to take better photos faster. And yes, I am timing this on purpose because I want this information in your brain before the deep dive down the rabbit hole that is the holiday sales season craziness begins. I want this year to be the year that you don't stay up until 2 a.m. trying to edit photos to make them look better to update your listings online. I want this year to be the year you get to celebrate and be excited about the boost of holiday sales because you're confident in sharing your photos online before all those sales, talking about your work more, and thus ultimately selling that work more. I can't help make the shipping and packaging go faster, but I can help make sure that you are taking better photos faster and getting a little bit more sleep because of it before you have to transfer into full-on elf mode for all the shipping labels. I'm obviously rambling and thinking way too much about Christmas now. We've got an amazing second half of my chat with Lisa and David to get to, so be sure before you settle into whatever project you're working on today, while your hands are still mostly clean, click on over to makersplaybook.com/Instagram-photography to save your seat to this free webinar. The 4 most common Instagram photography mistakes and how to avoid them. Yes, even with your cell phone. It is live, so I am there in the virtual flesh on camera, and we will be leaving as much time as possible for live Q&A at the end as well. So one more time, before we hit play on that sponsor message and dive into the rest of our chat with the adults, it's makersplaybook.com/Instagram-photography. I cannot wait to virtually see you in 2 very short weeks.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brand, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brand. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 13 years, Rebecca Ikes-Kara. You were just saying like 2 or 3 years ago, you were in a very different place. You were pushing, you were hustling. So this is a recent kind of shift.
Right. We believed that you had to hustle in order to be successful. Since reading that book and starting to go in a different direction, we want the same things. The things we wanted never changed. With the hustle or without the hustle, it didn't change. Hustle has actually become a negative word. It's kind of like,
we try not to say it.
It's a bad word now.
Our side hustle.
If he's like, oh, I got to hustle, I'm like, no, you don't. You got to slow it down. Go get a drink of water. Clear your mind. That's not what we're doing here. But work harder, David.
But I need those boxes shipped by 3 p.m.
No, yeah. But no, yeah. So we were believing that to have success, you needed to do that. We're taking a step of faith in a sense in the whole process. It's like, well, can we do this and not hustle? That does not mean not work hard. We are working very hard. Not hustling, not giving into this, like, you know, being more productive, being more self-actualized, being all mentally there. Like, it's an impossible bar that just keeps moving. And it's like, okay, so where can we find contentment? We heard a statistic once. It said something like, you know, up to $75,000 of income a year, your happiness increases. It actually helps your life. But over that, your happiness does not increase. It actually decreases. And we're like, okay, we don't need more. It's not about scaling. It's not about getting bigger. It's about having enough and being content.
Yep.
Not that we're not hungry people, not that we're not like ambitious people, but what if we're ambitious for enough? You know, not ambitious for more. It's a very different pace of life. That I think when people hear we have 5 kids and that we homeschool, they're imagining that, like I said this earlier, like our world does not revolve around our kids. Our kids, we all as a family work to help each other. So it's not like so people see what I'm doing or whatnot. My 13-year-old makes like 90% of the meals, like
or dinner or that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
our older 3 can cook
they can cook,
and are
clean
involved
the
in
entire
some of the
house,
cleaning and
do all of the laundry, mow the lawn. Like, we have very independent, very self-structured children who are basically our small business partners. You know, like, they
Which I can tell you how that works as a tax. You know, we'll do that off the recording.
Yeah.
There's
yes.
a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's like very legal, very healthy. Like, it's totally fine. It reminds me of, I heard Rachel Rogers, who is I guess, I don't know if she would call herself a self-made millionaire or whatever. She wrote the book that's called We Should All Be Millionaires, which for those of us saying, let's focus on enough might sound counterintuitive, but it's more about also kind of the social justice side of things. And like, you know, so it's not just about having all the things, but also like how when you earn what you need, you can then also be a greater power and enact change and have influence on all of that stuff. But anyway, she was saying that she has explained to her, I think she has 3 kids, you know, that as a family, they are a team.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and that she does not exist solely for the beck and call of her children. And so when she has her office hours, her work hours, and one of her kids comes in and needs something or is trying to interrupt her or whatever, she'll say, like, right now, you know, my job on the team right now is to do, you know, is to be the CEO or to be the, you know, is to do this thing. So I need you to be the team member who's going to do, you know, is going to do this. And she writes this way more eloquently. So I'm rambling and I think you get the metaphor, but essentially that, like, it's not that you just drop everything and do whatever they need all of the time, but that's kind of like, hey, we got to both do this together to make this thing work. And then, you know, of course, when she's with them, she's 100% with them.
Right.
But when she's in her office, she's in her office.
Right.
And that's that.
Yeah.
So
That is proving to be difficult.
well, you've mentioned a few different things that I think provides, I'm still working on my segues for the community questions. Our community member, Bill, which you guys might know on Instagram as a live guy, he's like the best hype man ever. He was saying for one, he loved your Ceramicon presentation, but he was fascinated by how supportive your local community is and how big of a role it seems to be playing from the outside looking in on your success. So he's curious to hear a little bit more about that community support and if that involvement has kind of shaped how these next steps you're taking with the business, or even as practical as like what products you guys choose to make or different things like that.
community support as in like pottery community or just community support in general? Because there's several layers to that, I guess.
That's true. And that's a great question. I think he's talking about geographically, like the Dayton area.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he specified their local community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we moved we loved our life in Alabama, minus the humidity and suffocating heat.
And gnats and other things. Yeah.
So the bugs. It was the bugs.
Yeah, bugs.
No.
Bugs and heat.
We loved our life there. We felt seen. We were a part of the community. We loved our relationships there and everything like that. But we chose to move to Ohio because we wanted to be closer to family. And that was hard because we had a life. And I'm the youngest of 4. Moving back to my home state, into my parents' house, I became like from this, we weren't like a thing in Dothan, but I was an adult in Dothan at least, and nobody was there to put me in my place. Moving back into my parents' house, I was back on the bottom of the totem pole in terms of like going out to say hi to the neighbor who remembers me running around in the winter without shoes on. Like
right.
back.
There's a picture of you in like a diaper and no clothes.
Right. So I'm back to being a child in everybody's mind, and here we are trying to do these big things. It's like, oh, Lisa. It's a good thing she has David, But all my family is here. My mom and dad and my 3 siblings, and actually one of David's brother and family lives here in town. But with our homeschooling, it's part of that is being in a community. And like, for example, when I was sick, I couldn't homeschool my kids. Other moms were coming over and taking care of my kids. I never had to worry about a meal. I didn't have to worry about their education. I didn't have to worry about whether or not, they were going to get fed or where they needed to be. In addition to our church community, which is just amazing. But we do have people who look at us, and instead of us being like this abnormal thing and like this like countercultural thing, it's like, oh, I see what you're doing there. I'm not going to do that, but go you. Like they're encouraging us. And it's amazing how much of that, even if they're not willing to go there with us, although a bunch of them do, it's living in a culture, surrounding yourself with people who believe that you could succeed, makes a huge difference.
So we have a wonderful family support network and a church support network and a homeschool, community. On top of that, around the Dayton area, there's just much more pottery. And part of me was like, oh, we shouldn't move to start a business. We should do it where there's none of that, we'll be so unique. But it's been interesting. I don't feel any competition with other potters around here. It is exactly the opposite. We share ideas and, hey, what shows have you done? What have been good shows for you?
Yes.
And there's so many other potters that are so free and giving with that. We now live near, not super near, but 35-ish minutes away from a pottery store. And so we went there, right when we moved, and Erin at Cornell Studio Supply, wonderful, because she's got experience as a potter. She's like, don't go full time.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. And wonderful advice.
Because you want to love each other. Don't do it. And now 6 years later, as we've been doing it. She's like, do it.
Why have you guys waited so long?
You can do it. Go.
But any question you have, you're having trouble with this or that, we've bought things, and they're a wonderful support network. So even the pottery community in this area. And then with Lisa, she knows so many potters online.
Well, another element of community, social media, pros and cons. I have made some amazing relationships through social media, and specifically potters who it's just an encouraging, wonderful community. And I know there's a lot of negative, but you kind of you find what you want to find on social media or in any situation. Sometimes you're just in a bad place. But oftentimes I think we find what we're looking for. And there have just been some amazing, supportive, encouraging relationships on social media that have, I don't know,
people that she'd never met in person. And it was so cool too, because Encika was just down the road from us in Cincinnati this year. And, it was our first time going, and we're like, it's so close. We have to go. Life was crazy. We made it for one day and a dinner the night before or 2 nights before. And she knew so many people there. And
well, that was the fun thing even for me was we could walk down the hallway and be like, oh, hey guys, we've never met in person, but I feel like I know you.
Really? Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, I remember seeing you and I was like, oh my goodness, David, it's Rebecca. Oh my goodness. We have to introduce ourselves.
It's like, just say something. This is really awkward. No,
I don't know what to say. Hi, Rebecca.
Little did you know I'd be like, hi.
Yep.
Well, I think that I'm kind of trying to merge some questions. I also know that I'm taking up way more of your time than planned, but we could go for another 5 hours also.
We're everything about 30 minutes a question, I think. So
Perfect. Great. We only have 10 more, so it's fine. No. Well, Jessica Connor, who is also an Ohioan, was talking about, and this is another question that Rhiannon had also asked, was about splitting up the tasks in the business. And I think we covered this a little bit, but just to be super clear, we've talked about, you're not both trying to pot to full-time 2 people doing the same work, but twice as much of it. You're doing same amount of production with administrative help.
Right. I can put a show online, I can do a shop drop and all the pictures and all of that kind of stuff. I do not like doing that. So David is much more efficient and much better, and he thinks through things maybe more logically differently.
He might have a system now too for that. I'm just saying.
Probably. I don't know. But I can outthrow him any day, any time.
20 to 1.
But part of that is because I have put the time into that. He has spent the last 6 years on a computer. He gets QuickBooks. David is actually more, I would say, Potterly of the two of us. And
depending on what you mean by that.
But what I mean
she
by
means
that,
I'm sloppier. That's what she means.
no,
I was like flannel in a hole in the ground. So
you see that was he
6 inches off.
grew his hair out starting a year ago when he was trying to quit again. He's like, okay, I'm not cutting my hair until I quit. Because this is a visual, like I look at myself in the mirror and I cannot escape the fact that my hair is getting longer and longer and longer. And so it was kind of like a visual reminder that he still hadn't quit. And the night he came home from the monastery, he's like, I'm ready to cut my hair.
buzz it.
Buzz it. Yeah.
Off it goes.
But no, he's more Potterly in the sense that, like, you know, you pick up a mug, you don't want it to feel perfect in a sense. You want it to feel like somebody's hands has touched it. That's why you're buying pottery. You're not trying to buy a perfect mug. You can do that at Target or whatever, wherever. And I have a problem with like I struggle with that aspect of it, but I have put in the time. I have put in all of the hours to becoming proficient skill-wise that he just hasn't had the time to do or hasn't made the time to do.
We've always defaulted to, oh gosh, we got to get this out. I want to practice more, but you know, you just go and do it. Like 9 years of doing that. And yeah, she's
easy.
like,
That sounds familiar to me.
they'll have kind of the, you know, delineate between tasks. However, I also want to get better.
He wants
so
to be-
so that if you know what, we got to get this order out.
Or I have another
She's-
baby.
She's sick. She doesn't have another appendix to blow up anymore.
There's a lot more organs, though. I mean, we can.
More organs, yeah, exactly. Knowing that we don't want everything to bottleneck through one thing. So that's tricky because you can't be a jack of all trades, master of none, you know, that kind of idea. But we both, and we were still trying to decide, are we going to have different lines of kind of David's line, this chunky, big rim kind of stuff that I like, or is it going to be, you know, we're still figuring that out right now. But we definitely have some things that we have different rules.
Yeah. Basically, to answer your question, though, no, we don't have clearly defined roles. Like, we don't know who cleans the studio floor. It's like, okay, so
The weakest
just
person who just finally gives up.
well, like, or
Just pull straws at the beginning of every day. Make it like Survivor.
I'm doing something more important, David. That
Yeah.
means you need to mop the floor. Like, can you go do that? Because I'm actually throwing things. And he's like, well, I'm doing the business stuff. You need to do it. So yes, we're wasting a lot of time by not having clearly made defined roles.
It's hugely time inefficient to start
Yes.
every day with like, okay, who's doing which thing here and that sort of thing. I mean, we're still in that like defining roles period. And I don't know, maybe small business law,
It's been a month, guys.
triple digits. Maybe we'll get there where we're like, oh yeah, we know who's doing what. So yeah. We'll see.
Hey, I mean, from my perspective, experiencing some similar of these things, I have for over a decade gotten to call the shots, right? I set up the systems. I hired people. So when they're hired, I get to tell them, you're using this system. This is how it's going to work. You don't do that, as it turns out, with your spouse. Because we all know I have great systems. The world knows. It's on a podcast. Apparently he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Well, no, it's true. It's true because, like, I have run the house. I have run the studio for the entirety of both, right? And he's stepping into my world. And he's coming into my house, my homeschool routine. He's coming into my studio and leaving his tools everywhere. And we're kind of like figuring out, okay, wait a minute. Where do you fit into this? And where do I back off? It's kind of been, are you familiar with the Enneagram at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So he's a 9, obviously, and I'm an 8, which, you know, again, when you hear lots of clashing, but we really do make an amazing team once we learn that, hey, David needs to go take a 2-hour jog every single Sunday and like just no cell phone, disconnect, like complete
Burn it off.
kind of
Yeah.
burn it off.
Yep.
If you sent me on a 2-hour jog every Sunday, I would.
You'd have to come send for me. Like somebody had to come get me.
Yeah. I'm like I'm being punished. Like, why are you putting me in solitude and timeout? Like, why do you hate me? But we've learned that, like, if there's an issue, he needs time to process. I need to know he's processing. So instead of our old tendency, which was he would try to calm things down and like respond.
You and I both just want to talk about it because that's how you resolve it. Because if we're not talking, then something's even worse. Why aren't you talking to me?
Exactly. Exactly. So now we learned that like he needs his 2 to 3 days to process, but he needs to.
Oh, I can't go 3 days. I've gotten up to like, he gets 4 hours.
Oh, yes. Our timeline is sped up too, because I know I need to engage right away. And yes.
Yeah. But which has been like life-changing for our work relationship, our marriage, our way of dealing with the kids is like understanding that about ourselves. Because before he would try to like calm the energy down, calm. And I'm like ratcheting it up. Like, what are you telling me to be calm?
How can you possibly be calm right now?
And now we're like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So that's been extremely helpful.
I love it. Oh my God. There's just so I'm like, yep, all of this matches. But David, if you do want to see a screen share of my love for Asana to build systems for all the business stuff, we can talk about that. I'm just referencing our other questions because I don't want to miss out. Oh, this is maybe a tough one, but it's also a very good one. And it's also something I think I have a tendency of jumping to in a bad way. In the sense that, so Rhiannon was asking, her and her partner are also both self-employed. She was wondering, and we've talked a little bit about, how did you know it was okay to quit? And that her assumption, I think, was correct in that, it's a bit of a leap of faith, that there's never okay, this is the perfect time. We have X amount of money in an emergency fund or whatever. But the question that really stuck out to me that I default to a lot, to my detriment, is wondering if you guys have any backup plans, any plan Bs, because and when I'm saying that I jump to always is when I go to take a risk, I immediately come up with okay, well, but if it doesn't work, I can
Yes.
And I'm realizing when I do that, I'm just pulling my energy away from the thing that I actually should be focusing on making happen. Like, it's crazy to hear me potentially say out loud that having a backup plan is not serving me, right? Because like, Mom, please don't have a heart attack with me saying that out loud. But in some ways, when you don't have one, you have to make it work,
Yeah. It's kind of a burn the ship kind of model where, you land on the shore and you got to burn the ships. Otherwise, you're just like, you know what, if this doesn't work out, we're going back.
Which was really important for David, less important for me. For example, when we lived with my parents, I was like, this is the perfect time to do the pottery. We don't have a mortgage. We have childcare built into the house, not to take advantage of Mom, but like, we have another adult in the house. Like, there's help with homeschooling, there's help with meals, there's help with all of this other stuff. And I'm thinking, this is ideal. He would rather die. He could not live with himself if he was living off of my parents while trying to do this
having
thing
quit from my
their
day job,
office.
from their office.
Yeah.
No, categorically not.
So he had to burn that ship. We moved into a nasty fixer-upper. This happened right when COVID, like we bought the house in January of 2020. And then the shutdown happened in March. And
wise, because buying it after COVID was real rough.
Yeah. And this house was just nasty. And so he, took it down to the studs and, ripped out all the floor and did all of the things. And that was important to him in order to do this thing.
Not important.
No.
Necessary.
Necessary.
Yeah,
necessary. But as far as an exit plan, like, again, it's a step of faith to say we're going to do something and that it's all going to work out. Like, I understand that we're saying this is kind of like a rose-colored glasses thing. We're like, oh, it's just going to work out. I would say, like, I'm not worried that it's not going to work out. And I'm not worried that if it doesn't work out the way we think it will, that there isn't still more life to live. Again, it's kind of like the idea that failure is not the worst thing that could happen. Our identity is not so bound up in this that if it didn't work, we couldn't pivot. I think pottery will always be a part of, what I do, how big of a role it takes, or like if this is our thinking about generational wealth, we're not going to create generational wealth making pots and selling them online.
In the monetary sense.
In a monetary sense. Yeah. That's true.
Oh.
And if we could choose between monetary generational wealth and just like a well-adjusted, like healthy,
human being.
non-traumatized, kids, like I
There's
would
gonna be
so take the second. But can we do that and pottery? And that's where, so
kind of our business plan, we have none, but our kind of business plan is like, okay, we're going to give pottery its time. We're going to give it its time. But one thing that he's really interested in, and with his skill set, like he's very handy and he is very good at rehabbing houses and doing all of the things. Getting into real estate within 3 years is kind of one of those long-term, not actual things, but we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know what kind of recession we're in. We don't know what the housing market's going to do. But that's in the back of our heads as like, we're going to give this everything. We're going to give this 100%. And then we're going to see how it goes. Because in 3 years, our youngest will be 5. It's not the same thing. Our oldest is going to be 18 and maybe going off to college. So our life is not going to look the same in 3 to 5 years anyways. So we're very willing and easy to pivot. And it's not like we have a backup plan or a plan B. It's like we just understand that life is not, it's not like this, not
It's the river.
Yeah, nothing is linear. It's like, okay.
So, but in terms of real world stuff, we have money set aside that we know, okay, we don't have to be cash flow positive right now. And we're not. Like this month, we're not going to be.
We had to replace the brakes on the van.
Yeah, like
our air conditioning broke.
Yeah, life happens, right? So, but
we keep our air off for as long as our air conditioner when we bought this house is probably 30 years old. So we have that like window unit in our bedroom for nighttime, and then it's like off for as long as physically possible.
So we have a certain, so we have this money as startup capital that we're like, okay, we don't have to be cash flow positive this month and maybe not next month. But if in my mind, it's like, we're giving this at least 2 years with no backup plan. And we're going to see where things shake down and what we can develop in 2 years. And if in 2 years, we're both having to put in 80 hours to make ends meet, that's not what we want as a family. There would be something else we could do. And it's not that we totally leave pottery. I think we'll always do pottery. But maybe we just, with what we're trying to accomplish, we're not going to eat off of that right now and rely on that totally. But I knew, like, part of us was, we were like, well, maybe we should try to go pick up a property and just try to get some rental income coming in too to help supplement. And I know if I go buy a property, I'm going to be like
so distracted,
150% for the next 3 months. And that's just a black hole of time. So we almost had to land on the shore of pottery business with no backup plan, knowing that we've got this little cushion that can get us through months where we're in the red, and we're going to give it 2 years. And if it's just, if it's just not working and we can't develop the system that we have that is somewhere in those ideal parameters that we have, then we do have to pivot and, maybe go back to part-time pottery and pick up some rental properties and rehab some properties. And then maybe that would provide the cash flow to then both go back to doing pottery basically full time. So we're figuring that.
I think that's so smart. Because I think a lot of us think of decisions as these finite, absolute, it's over and done with. And there are very few decisions in our life that are that way. And probably, there's some that should be that way. And then there's some that are, who knows? That's a different story. Because I was just having this conversation with Yvonne Rausch, and she was saying, just because I'm full-time right now doesn't mean that maybe in 6 months I don't need to pick up a side gig just, for a slow period. Doesn't mean I might not go back to full-time. And it doesn't make any of us
failures
less of a maker. Right. It doesn't make, And what's also really interesting and why I'm obsessed with systems is for so long I kept perceiving my friends who are traditionally employed as having more quote unquote security. And then I realized, and there's still days that I feel that way. I've applied for jobs. It's happened in the course of for a period of time, 5 years into my business, I worked a full-time job on top of being a full-time photographer because I was just bitter about having shitty healthcare. So it ebbs and flows, but also thinking about that job has completely sidetracked my brain into what the point was. Oh, and it was a great point.
Oh.
Nope.
We'll come back. There is one other question, but I wanted to kind of give space that if you don't want to answer this, we'll strike it from the record and it doesn't matter because it maybe gets really nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. Because Darcy was asking,
just very pragmatically how household income compares to cost of living in Dayton and how that works managing 5 kids, being self-employed, all of that. We've like touched on, but so if you don't want to go into numbers,
No,
that's
I had to have David make me a sheet at the beginning of this week. I was like, I need to know what our fixed income is. I need
Fixed expenses.
fixed expenses. I need to know that number.
Yeah.
And then I need to know what we spend money on, like gas, food, what we are averaging. And I need to know exactly what I spend on pottery, and I need to know what number I need to hit. Like I need a goal for myself and I need to see these numbers, and what was I going to say? Oh, this is a big thing. We came into marriage with no debt. I think that's huge. I think that's maybe uncommon is the fact that we came into marriage without any, and we worked. Another countercultural thing is that I have never worked a full-time job in our marriage. I've always been the stay-at-home mom. We got married a week after I graduated college. I got pregnant 2 months later. I have been for 14 years pregnant or nursing. All but 12 months of the last 14 years I've been pregnant or nursing. So,
my goodness, woman, you're just a flippin' powerhouse. I just need to interrupt you to be like, goodness gracious.
Well, okay, but that's a choice to be a stay-at-home mom. I could go work. I have a work ethic. I could do that. But we chose for me to be home, which meant we chose different lifestyles. We don't spend a lot on entertainment. We do not buy new cars. We only buy used cars in cash, and only if we have the cash. We don't. I only a week ago, for the first time in 14 years, got a credit card. And it's only if he dies, I need to have a line of credit. I need.
Also, the point system, as long as you don't have a spending problem, the point system is truly how we travel. We go to see my in-laws.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've never been a big shopper.
Yeah.
I don't buy, I wear clothes down and then I have to buy new clothes. And then I feel really guilty because I have to spend so much money to actually get 10 years worth of clothing that I haven't purchased. It's a whole thing. But within that, everything we put on a credit card because we know we're not spending outside of that fixed spreadsheet budget. Because I work that point system to the flippin' bone. The house renovations, everything goes on there because then that's how truly, when we gutted our kitchen, we put all of the cabinets and everything on a very specific travel credit card. And that's how we went to Australia.
Yeah. Yep.
We didn't pay for the flights. We used points.
Exactly.
It looks super luxurious on the outside, but it's let me tell you, my very savvy way.
Yes, exactly. So, I don't know if you were the one who mentioned it. Are you the one who talked in CinemaCon about how we sell luxury items? Yes, that stuck with me so much because I think people assume you sell a luxury item, therefore you must be rich. And there are a lot of assumptions made on this little glimpse you see through social media, and we can't afford our pottery. I couldn't go out and buy my $68 mug, and I think it's underpriced for what I'm doing, what I see other people doing.
Yep.
But I can't imagine taking the price up more because it's already astronomical, kind of thing. So we're not living an extravagant lifestyle, I think, and we're not for example, girls all want to do soccer in the fall, and it's $100 per kid to do soccer plus cleats, and
that's recreational.
That's rec soccer. It's only
It's
2 months of soccer, right down the road. Yeah. And we're like, okay, girls, $100 for each of you is a lot to swing because we have so many kids. You're gonna have to put some skin in the game. You're gonna have to find a way to earn $50 each, and we're gonna have to, if you want to be in soccer and this is enough for you, then you're gonna have to find a way to do this and also help your 4-year-old sister earn $50 because she's not going to do that by herself.
You should watch her be the one that comes in with 200. Just saying.
Well, but they're all yes, okay, what can we do? How can we do this? It's not the scarcity mindset of oh, we're poor, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't. It's ooh, how can we do this?
How many lawns can I mow?
Yeah, what can I do in order to get where I want to be? Not kind of a debilitating existential crisis of, oh, we're poor, my parents are making us do this thing. But we're doing this as a family unit. We all want the same things, but we just know that if we're going to get there, we have to all work together. So on a practical level, the numbers are very we don't have a lot of things that we're spending
Well,
money on.
we have the benefit of coming from youth ministry and making $20,000 a year. Like, gosh,
We know how to be. We know how to be poor.
We live like kings right now. Yeah.
Being at poverty level.
Yeah.
I mean, like we have 7 people in our family. We are like ridiculously under the poverty level. We live like kings. We are not poor people.
And that's a relative thing. Here's what I would say. So, we've got $1,000 mortgage. We've got to, keep the lights on and a water bill and the trash bill. And so when I laid out expenses for Lisa, here are the fixed expenses. That might be like $2,500 a month. And then we got to decide how we're going to eat and how much we're going to eat.
That's the tricky one.
That's the trickiest one for us.
Because we don't spend money on entertainment, but boy, do we eat.
There's like no, but like if we're going to eat strawberries,
they're going to be organic strawberries.
if you eat conventional strawberries, you will die. You will grow a third arm. You will turn. It's like, nah, just kidding.
No,
I mean, we have a little pot that's growing strawberries right now, but apparently the rabbits are enjoying those.
Yeah. Our children are like locusts. They come in and devour all
yes,
things.
Yes.
But to be fair, like, so say fruit, for example, we only buy in season and we only buy it if we can afford it. And it's not like, oh, we eat strawberries out of season when they're 10 times more expensive. We just don't eat strawberries.
They also don't taste good then anyway.
Right. So we buy a lot of, seasonal and local things to offset that, but we do spend a lot of money on food.
One of our biggest line items.
We don't eat out very often.
Yep.
Oh, okay. My brother, our studio is a detached garage with an apartment above, and my brother rents the apartment. And that was something in an idealistic world, David, he did not want to include that in our income when we were making a business plan. We're 1 month in, and it's like, no.
We need the budget around that.
Adam Field told me, and I don't think I'm speaking out of place because it's on record. It's on his episode. Adam Field's got an Airbnb above his studio in Montana.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's part of.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well, every little bit helps. So we're at the point now, where.
What did we say we had to make though a month?
Well, and we're also at the point now. I'm trying to find a good small business CPA. Like I'm transitioning right now. So, what's your expected income for the year? We're like,
you tell me. That's why I'm hiring you.
And so figuring out self-employment tax and, all of the things thrown in. Yeah, we're still in we're kind of making it up as we go right now. So I think we're going to end this month, $1,500 in the red maybe, or something like that. And that eats into our startup capital, that money that we have set aside where we're like, okay, but we can still eat this month. As much as we joke on our Instagram story.
Not starving.
Good show. I guess we can eat. But yeah,
This was the thing I forgot from earlier is that, the perception of security when people are traditionally employed, when you are monitoring these things, and this is why I'm so big on systems for everybody, is when you can track your cash flow, when you can monitor it. I can pull up a spreadsheet right now and tell you if I zero out this line and we don't make another dime for the rest of the year, even if I say something dramatic happened and I have to give up all of the wedding contracts I already have or whatever, I can zero it all out and tell you exactly what month we go in the red.
Yes, exactly.
Or I can estimate like, oh, we have a market this month. Maybe we'll do this much in sales. Where does that take us on that cash flow? And, it's not, some people might hear you're going to be 1,500 in the red and that sounds really scary to them. But when you are planning that out, because we do have seasonal businesses, and none of us want to admit that we all work basically in retail right now. Like we're in that same season. And so, come Q4, come the holidays, it's a perception of feast and famine, but actually if you're working the systems, if you're tracking the numbers, you can even it out through the whole year and just be stable.
Yeah, we definitely have like this month, the month of July, which is our first full-time month, 2 of the markets got rained out halfway through and 1 got completely canceled. So out of the 4 we've done this month, we've only had 1 full-time market, which was fabulous.
And that would have been easily the difference between, for that.
If we had those
$1,500, boom.
We would have, So it's kind of a funny thing, but that has never mattered before. We've done this. We did this all last year. And before it was just extra cash, or if it was rained out, we're like, yippee, we get a Saturday at home. Yeah. And now we're like, do we trust the process that, this is we're playing the long game. Yeah. We're not in the short game. We're in the long game.
And partly that came into play, I think, when I originally decided, how am I going to quit my job? I didn't want to quit and go into pottery full-time in January when things are, for us at least, historically just dead. I mean, it's a wonderful making month, January, February, getting to March, but pottery is just a year-long crescendo for us, typically peaking
to October, November, December.
Peaking there, which is how fast can we make it? Because, that's how fast we can sell it, leading up to Christmas time. I wanted to phase out of the dental office, kind of mid-year or at least late spring, because also if I phased out in September, that's over. It's over. We don't have time to make. We don't have time to capitalize on that season. So I knew I wanted to do kind of late spring. It ended up being a little bit later than I wanted to in June, towards the end of June. But that that's going to give us time to ride that crescendo, ride that wave up through the Christmas season. So
that's so smart. I could just keep going on, and I realize we're going to be at 2 hours of your time, which feels a bit aggressive.
Everyone will have this off by now, but we can keep going.
Right. I just kind of really wish we lived closer, because I was man, conversations like these make me feel not so crazy.
Yes. It's a beautiful thing when you find people who are doing or, trying to do the same thing. You can talk the same language. You can talk about, yes. And you don't sound like you're complaining when you talk about, okay, this market got rained out. What now? They're like, well, why are you trying to make money off of a market if it could rain out? I'm like, I don't know.
That's not stable.
I was the same.
Or it'll be okay. Your work is beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But the market rained out, guys.
Or once I was telling how my daughter loves to cook. So she's not like a Cinderella in the kitchen, but she loves to cook. And I was saying this to another mom and she's like, is that what you want for your children? What she heard was oh my goodness, that sounds like a horrible childhood. What I was saying was this is the best childhood ever. She gets to have the free reign of the kitchen. What 13-year-old gets to do whatever she wants in the kitchen? And it's kind of one of those things where you can talk to people and be like, oh yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense.
Yes. Well, and we've talked a lot about community support, and it's there is such a difference between support of loved ones, support of family and friends. That is imperative. Support of other communities that we're all a part of for you guys, church, homeschooling, whatever, all of these other things that all of us have going on in our lives. But it is so different to have those people who are when we're laughing our heads off at the visual of a Nordic Trek wheel and you didn't have to explain it to me in detail, there's just something different about it. And that's, people have heard me saying this ad nauseum. So
community is important. Community is very important.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I feel like we've gotten 2 of the girls in the room maybe, so we're going to stop before we get up to 4, which is probably a broken bone.
Well, they're staring at us through the bay window.
Yes.
Eating a rice cake, half dressed, one of them.
Yes.
Hi.
Pawing at the window? No.
Eyes, tapping.
Yeah.
For people who somehow don't know where you are on the internet, where should we send them?
Dault Pottery on Instagram is where we are most active.
And that's Dault Pottery, not to be confused with adult pottery, which is a thing.
And not our thing.
And when we got started, Google would autocorrect to adult pottery because, ADULT is kind of like DAULT. So it's DAULT, Dault Pottery.
Yes.
We don't do adult pottery, but it's amazing what you can
this
make.
Is what you, this is what you want to end on.
Yeah, no.
This is how you end this interview.
This will help them remember, though. It's not.
Oh, they'll remember
for sure.
They will remember something.
They will. And their Google search will never be the same.
Dault Pottery. So daultpottery.com is our horrible little website that we've kind of started to construct. I mean, it's amazing when there's pottery on.
Yeah.
And I think she's on Instagram sometimes. I don't know.
Just a little. I will also put a link to the Instagram in the show notes. So instead of scarring anyone from the potential of adult pottery, they can just click it.
Perfect.
And safely journey over to your part of the internet.
Perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Let's be honest. If the girls had not told us that time was up, Lisa, David, and I could have just kept going for another couple of hours, probably. And as much as I love sharing these conversations and hearing from all of you about how much you enjoy listening to the podcast, if I'm being totally honest, the chance to connect with other makers who are building lives similar to my own dreams is also the support that I need. I built a community because it's something I knew I needed when I first started too. It's something I still need even 13 years later. It can feel lonely out there when you're dreaming up something that looks completely different from what everyone else around you is doing. But as soon as you have a few colleagues in your corner cheering you on, it feels a lot less crazy. It's still hard, just not impossible. Okay, before I get all existential here, because you know I could keep going, there are, of course, very pragmatic things about making this dream of making a living from the things we make actually work. And, obvious segue here, one of those very pragmatic things is being able to consistently take great photos that represent what your pots actually look like in real life. The shape, the glaze colors, the size, everything. So here's your reminder that in less than 2 weeks, I'm hosting a free live webinar, the 4 most common Instagram photography mistakes. And of course, how to avoid them. Yes, even if you're only using your cell phone. It's on September 6th and 7th. And yes, September is less than 2 weeks away, my friends, if you're listening in real time. As I said, this is a totally free webinar, but spaces are limited because that's how webinar hosting platform business models work. So that's what we got. Be sure to save your spot by going to makersplaybook.com/Instagram-photography. And I know what you're going to ask. Yes, there will be a replay, but in order for me to send you that replay link, I still need your email address. So please still go sign up. Not to mention, while we are live, I'll be answering your questions at the end of the whole presentation. So that's a pretty big perk to showing up live. We have 2 different times on the 6th and the 7th to make sure it works for a variety of time zones. And no one is going to have to get up at 2 a.m. for this, all right? The link is in the show notes, so you can just click right on through, but just in case you're driving and should definitely not be clicking on anything on your phone, let me just say it one more time to root it into your memory. makersplaybook.com/Instagram-photography. Total personal aside, considering most of the year I'm talking into a microphone without being able to actually see any of you, as I am right now, I'm also particularly excited to simply talk with y'all in real time like real humans, even if it is just virtual and not in person. So let's hang out together on either September 6th or 7th. And the bonus will be that we'll finally start saving you time when it comes to photographing your work. It doesn't have to be nearly as painful as it has been. You just need someone to actually teach you photography specifically for pottery, rather than all those generic YouTube videos I know you've been staying up way too late watching. I've got your back, my friend. A huge thanks to our sponsor, Amico, who helps make this podcast possible.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brand, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brand. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzfan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality. Because together, we've got this.